Alright, so as I working through the um, print to play process on Skyrise, I'm going to show how we use a simple oil wash, homemade oil wash, which I showed the step-by-step direct instructions to make, along with the recipe for that in another video, and you can find it here. I'm just kidding. I don't know how to do that yet. I don't know how to do anything yet. But I'll put the link for how to make this in the description, and then I'll show you right now a little step-by-step process how to go from a plain old raw plastic mini to something that looks like that. I don't have a intro or anything yet. Alright, let's get this out of the way. Okay. So I already took some out of here. Put it in here just in case something spills. It's not a horrific mess, it's just a terrible mess. So I'm gonna basically just cover this. To get an old brush, you don't want to use any of your good brushes for this. You want to cover this. I do like to wear a little glove because this gets pretty messy. I mean, and technically the stuff is probably toxic. I don't know what all that means. I'm not a scientist. But, you know, better to not get it all over you. I also want to have an extra paper towel just to clean this up. Now, I will say I did seal this with just some Mod Podge, because this right here is just a little cardboard piece that they stuck here on the bottom, and I wanted to make sure that if anything ever got on it, it would just wipe off no problem. So I just sealed it, and then when I'm doing the wash, I didn't want it to get soaked into it either. So we'll be able to wipe it right off, and that's another thing you'll find when working with an oil wash. That I do this for. I chose this for a number of reasons, but one of them is it's just so forgiving, and I'll kind of show that as I go through the process. I don't know how to edit yet, so I'm kind of just have different pieces in different stages, like the old baking shows, or maybe baking shows still do it. I don't know. I imagine they still do. I just don't watch them anymore. Okay, so I'm just gonna. The first step is just soak this in wash, and you just get a nice liberal amount, and just make sure you cover the whole model. There's no skill involved in this, none whatsoever. It's just a basic. It's not much different than a color by numbers or a paint by numbers or whatever, coloring book, or that old, like, later on it in the process it reminds me a little bit of remember those books, like the paint that was already on it, like the dried watercolor. You just kind of added water and switched it around. It was like a paint by painting book. I don't know. Was that a fever dream? Did those actually exist? You guys know what I'm talking about? I have no idea what I'm talking about. So that's it. You just liberally get it all on there, and you put it off to the side and let it dry. And when it dries, it will look a little something like this. So this is what that'll look like in a couple of hours. Of course, it's the yellow. I should have done them all the same color, but I didn't. So you see, I mean, that it dries, and it's kind of, yeah, it's in the nooks and crannies where we want it, but it's also all over the place. So what a lot of people will do here is they'll say, oh, just put get yourself a little. I use these little makeup sponges, and then I kind of cut them as they get saturated because I'm cheap. They'll say just use a little mineral spirits, but put it on here and then kind of wipe it up. But I noticed that I just didn't love it. It was too sporadic, it got it out of the nooks and crannies, and it took, like, it felt like I had no control over what was going on. So what I found instead is I was trying to make my own, like, rub and buff, and I could never get it to work, but I did kind of by accident figure this out, and it works really nicely. So what I'll do is I'll just get some on here, and then I'll either get rid of the excess on my thumb, or maybe on a paper towel every now and then, and I'll go through, and on the flat spots I will just kind of pick up what I don't want on there, and it'll get mixed in with the wax, and then I can use it to kind of get into the nooks and crannies or on the edges. And if you go with the grain, you'll pick up the excess, and if you go against the grain, it will kind of work its way into the nooks and crannies for you. I tried at one time. I tried to combine this process, and it just doesn't work. So yeah, it took less time, but it didn't look as good. I didn't have as much control. But this way, you've got all kinds of control. If there's a place that you think doesn't have enough, just go back over it in the opposite direction and let it kind of stick in there. If there's a place where you think there's too much, just go with the grain, and it'll kind of pick it right up. And then what's nice is, like, yeah, this takes some time. It probably will take, for these, after you do the whole process, maybe 5 to 10 minutes a piece. But it's not stressful 5 to 10 minutes. It's a fun little kind of, I don't really need to pay attention to what I'm doing here. I can just kind of slap it on and fix it as I go, because it is, like I said, it's so absurdly forgiving. The oil paint is by itself, but once you add this little process, and this is just regular old neutral shoe lettuce or shoe polish, dude. That's all it is. That's all it is, my dudes. Right there. I'll put a link. Oh boy, I just hit the camera, and let me tell you, I'm trying something new with it, just so I don't have to go like hold everything or wrap my arms around the camera while I'm working. But any little bump and it might fall to the ground. So yeah. So what I'll do is I'll just do this to all 4 sides, low stress, do the whole mini, kind of work the shoe polish into the miniature, kind of get the excess off the flat raised areas, and then any little crevices that have just too much ink in them, or oil wash, I'll kind of work it out, and then when I'm doing the sponge, I'll make sure that I don't have too much in any one area, because my goal for this is to just bring out what the artist, the sculptor, has already done. I just want to bring out their detail. I don't want to cover it. I just want to draw attention to it. When it's not painted or washed, you can't see it at all, really. But if you put too much in, and now it just looks like it's gone through a fire. And it probably wouldn't be so dark if I used like a little bit lighter, like a gray wash. So you can experiment around. I've got the gray. I've tried it. It does look okay, but there's something about that black contrast that I just love. So I've pretty much got the whole thing covered here, and moved it out of the places where I don't want it and into the places where I do. And so then we'll just let this dry maybe a couple hours, and after a couple hours this will look like something like this. Let me wipe my glove off here. So it'll look something like this. a little bit better, but not perfect. So what I'll do now is I'll still have my brush ready, because there might be some low areas that need the oil dug out and spread around, and then repositioned to some other areas, especially if I press too hard. But this is the point. This is the only kind of finesse. This is the only part of the system, the process, the paint to play process, where, you know, maybe a little bit of skill, but it's, I mean, after you do 2 or 3 of them, you'll kind of get the idea about where to put the sponge and how hard to press. Like, seeing here, I can already tell I'm gonna have to come through here with my paintbrush and kind of dig that out, but it'll make sense here in a second. So I just really lightly, and the harder you press, the more you're gonna take off. And if you take off too much, guess what? No big deal. Just just do this process again in that spot, let it sit for a couple hours, and you just redo the whole process again. So this, it's so entirely and completely and ridiculously unforgiving, or forgiving, not unforgiving, forgiving, that, I mean, that's why I say this is a perfect little system for a beginner to learn. So just really lightly. Sometimes I'll put a little bit of extra on here, kind of smooth it in, just so it glides and doesn't get stuck and grab the ink that I don't want it to grab, the oil wash. I'm going to call it ink and oil wash. I don't know why, I just will. And it, like I said, you really want, if you want to leave more on there or in there, you just do it a little lighter. You go against the grain. If you go with the grain, it'll take it right off. But now, see, this is what I wanted to show. See all that in there? Like, this looks fine to me. That looks good. That looks good. That looks great. But there's maybe a little on the corners here that I want to dig out. And then this here, and on here, I want to get out of there. So what I'll do is I'll get a nice decent amount of wax or polish, and I'll just kind of push it right out of there and get it into a flat area where I can put the makeup sponge and just clear the excess. So now that, you notice I took off too much because I came with the grain. I didn't go against it. So as I take off some of this extra over here, there's cat hair everywhere. As I take off some of this extra over here, I will just reapply this here. And I said later on, you can polish, you can redo this step as many times as you need to until you really get a good idea and a sense of what your aesthetic is, just how much of the ink do you want where you want it, you know. And you kind of can get caught up in doing it too much. At some point you just go, you know what, that's good, that looks good, move on to the next piece. I'd never want to spend more, for me as a gamer, as someone who likes to play the games, I don't like to spend more than 10 minutes on any mini of this size. You know, a gigantic one like the Sentinels that come in the Marvel Zombies Sentinel Strike, yeah, those take a lot longer, but they're, you know, 10 times bigger than this. So I'd like to take about 10 minutes and don't want to mess around too much. So I just come, and I said the harder. What's also cool about this is you can kind of direct where your highlights are. So if you want your like everything up here on these it doesn't work as well because they're buildings, like they're just straight up and down. But on another menu, maybe you want the weapon to be a little lighter, and if the harder you push down on this while you're getting the stuff off of there, the more it'll look like there's light on it. So there we go. So when you get done, you let that dry, you know, and it ends up looking like something like this. And I think that looks fantastic on a table, you know. So I've got a bunch more of those to do, and I'll do them at my leisure. Sit around when I'm watching TV or YouTubes or learning how to play games. I'll just work on those. And for a game like this, it's yeah, it'll be quite a while. I wish that I would not have passed on the wash that they did, although I am hearing some mixed reviews on that wash, but I still would rather have somebody else do it than me spend 10 hours doing it, no matter how good it ends up looking, which it does. It looks pretty swank. And here are the monuments. I think they look fantastic. There's the gray one, which I've already shown. Here's the red one. The yeller. It's beautiful. And this green was just so cool, I think. I mean, they end up looking great, but I would have rather somebody else did it so I could, deluxify some other things in this game and then some other games as well. But okay, all right, well, if you thought that was helpful, please like, please subscribe, absolutely leave a comment if you have any questions or want to talk about why you like to keep games playing and what I'm doing is ridiculous and I should be reading rule books and solving world hunger and everything else with my time instead of doing this. Or if you're also a bit crazy like me and love to deluxify literally every little thing about your game to make it your own, unique, one-of-a-kind deal, let me know what you do. Let me see, if you have links to some pics or something, or your own videos, that would be awesome. Leave those, to check them out. Alright, so till next time, keep gaming. Peace.